On July 10, 2005, 5 friends set off for what they thought would be an unforgettable adventure in San Luis Potosi. The sun blazed down on the barren landscape as they packed their gear into Javier's pickup truck. Miguel, the self-proclaimed leader, led the group with confidence, tossing in a cooler full of beer and tequila. The others, Carlos, Alejandro, Alio, and Daniel, followed with their camping gear, oblivious to the dangerous path ahead. The excitement in the air was palpable, but little did they know, their lack of preparation and understanding of caving would soon lead them into unimaginable danger. Before we dive into video, please subscribe our channel. As always, viewer discretion is advised. Miguel, excited about the upcoming adventure, had no idea what they were truly getting into. He had seen pictures of underground raves near Cueva de los Caballos on social media, and quickly decided that this would be the perfect spot for their weekend trip. With no research into the area's terrain or safety measures, he convinced his friends to join him, promising them a wild experience they wouldn't forget. The group, eager for fun, followed Miguel without question, trusting his judgment, despite having no knowledge of caving. They didn't even consider the need for proper caving equipment, such as helmets, lighting, or emergency supplies. What they did bring was alcohol, lots of it, along with a portable speaker and recreational substances that would only cloud their thinking as the day went on. The group's excitement led them to ignore basic safety rules that any experienced caver would know. They didn't take the time to understand the dangerous nature of caves, nor did they think about how alcohol and drugs would impair their ability to navigate such an unfamiliar and unpredictable environment. Their mindset was simple. They were going for a party, not an exploration. They didn't realize that their carefree attitude would soon lead to disastrous consequences, setting the stage for a tragedy that could have been easily avoided. When they finally arrived at the cave site, the friends wasted no time setting up their camp. The weather forecast had predicted heavy rain, but none of them had bothered to check it before leaving. They were too caught up in the excitement of the adventure to consider any potential risks. As soon as they arrived, they cracked open beers, even before their tents were fully set up. Their carefree attitude continued as they started preparing for the rave. Despite the darkening sky and the looming threat of rain, the group didn't seem concerned. Their focus was entirely on having fun. The absence of proper planning and the lack of concern for the weather conditions marked a major red flag. But the group continued with their careless behavior, ignoring the necessary precautions they should have taken. They were not thinking about the dangers around them, just the fun they hoped to have. The combination of alcohol and poor decision-making set the tone for what was about to unfold. As the night progressed, they paid no attention to the storm clouds gathering above, or the slippery path leading to the cave entrance. The group was unaware that the situation was becoming more dangerous by the minute, but their excitement kept them moving forward, eager to join the party inside the cave. As the rave began inside the cave, the friends were fully immersed in the music and excitement, their inhibitions lowered by alcohol. The atmosphere was electric, with hundreds of people dancing and enjoying themselves. The group, now heavily intoxicated, ventured deeper into the cave, ignoring the few "do not enter" signs posted along the way. Their curiosity and the promise of an unforgettable experience overpowered any sense of caution. They moved further into the darkness, their phone flashlights the only source of light. As they stumbled through the cave, the ground became slick from the rain, but they didn't care. They laughed off any slips or falls, their attention completely fixed on the party. At this point, they were so consumed by the thrill of the moment that they paid no mind to the dangers of their surroundings. Their lack of respect for the cave's natural hazards only grew as they pushed further into the depths, oblivious to the increasing risk they were taking. The friends were now fully out of their depth, both physically and mentally, and their behavior was a stark contrast to the serious preparation and caution that caving required. The excitement of the rave was intoxicating, but it also led them further into a dangerous situation, with no consideration for the consequences of their reckless actions. As midnight approached, the storm outside intensified, with rain pouring down in heavy sheets. The ground around the cave entrance became slippery, but Miguel, now heavily intoxicated, was determined to retrieve more alcohol from their campsite. Despite the worsening weather and the growing concerns of his friends, he insisted on going alone. Alejandro, who was slightly less drunk, reluctantly agreed to accompany him, grabbing a sack to carry back more beer. They didn't think to bring any flashlights or headlamps by now. Their phone batteries had died from taking photos and videos earlier. The only light came from occasional flashes of lightning, which illuminated the surroundings for brief moments before plunging them back into total darkness. As they walked through the pouring rain, Miguel's overconfidence grew. He ignored the dangers of the slippery path, convinced that he could handle the situation. Alejandro, struggling to keep up, was increasingly uncoordinated from the alcohol. Despite the rising danger, they continued their journey, unaware of the perilous path ahead. The storm made everything worse, but their impaired judgment clouded any rational thinking. They were far from prepared for the dangerous conditions and lacked the basic tools needed to navigate the darkness and wet terrain. Miguel's determination to get more alcohol and his false sense of confidence were about to lead them into an irreversible situation. As they continued through the rain-soaked darkness, Miguel's confidence led him further off the path. The ground was slippery and unstable, but he pressed on, convinced that he knew the way. In a brief flash of lightning, he saw what seemed like solid ground ahead and took a step forward, only to realize too late that it was not stable ground at all. His foot found empty air, and with a loud crash, the sack filled with beer bottles shattered against the rocks as he plummeted into the abyss. The terrifying sound of breaking glass echoed through the night, followed by Miguel's scream, which was abruptly cut off as he fell. The drop was brutal, first a 79-foot fall, then a steep 20-foot slope, and finally, another drop of 62 feet. His body struck the hard, jagged surface with immense force. The entire sequence of events happened so quickly that Alejandro, trailing behind, could only freeze in shock and terror. He called out desperately, but there was no response. Miguel was gone. The horrifying reality of the situation hit Alejandro like a wave. In that moment, he realized that the carefree attitude they had carried into the cave had led them to this deadly moment. Alejandro stood paralyzed with fear, unable to comprehend the severity of what had just happened. Alejandro stood frozen in the rain, his heart pounding in his chest as the reality of what had just occurred began to set in. The sound of breaking glass and Miguel's scream echoed in his ears, snapping him out of his shock. He quickly realized that Miguel had fallen into the pit, and there was no way to reach him in his current state. Fear took over, but instinct kicked in. Alejandro managed to gather enough presence of mind to retrace his steps, carefully navigating the slippery path back to the cave entrance. His movements were slow and hesitant, but he finally made it back to the group. Shaking and breathless, he explained what had happened, his voice barely steady as he described Miguel's fall into the pit. The friends, initially stunned and confused, rushed into action, but the realization of their disastrous situation settled in. The carefree party atmosphere that had once defined their trip was now replaced with panic and guilt. Everyone was sober with fear now, but it was too late to undo the damage. Alejandro's escape from the pit was a miracle, but it came at the cost of his friend's life, and he knew that nothing would ever be the same again. The news of Miguel's fall spread quickly among the group, and panic set in. Carlos, Alio, and Daniel, despite still being intoxicated, immediately rushed out into the rain, desperate to find their friend. They were disoriented and scared, stumbling through the slippery mud as they frantically searched the dark cave entrance. The storm raged on, making it even harder to navigate the treacherous terrain. Alejandro, still shaken by the fall, watched helplessly as his friends went deeper into the cave. One of the few sober people at the rave used their phone to contact local authorities, and soon, rescue teams specializing in cave exploration were on their way. As the hours passed, the rain slowed to a drizzle, but the group's hopes of finding Miguel alive grew dimmer. The 4 remaining friends, now painfully sober, led the rescue team to the approximate location of the fall, but the situation was grim. Their frantic search had turned into a slow, methodical effort, and they soon realized just how unprepared they had been for the harsh reality of cave exploration. The authorities, equipped with proper gear and training, would now take over. But for the friends, the weight of their recklessness and the gravity of the situation were already sinking in. By the time the rescue team arrived at dawn, the rain had subsided, leaving the landscape damp and cold. The group, now completely sober, led the rescuers to the location where Miguel had fallen. The professionals were equipped with safety lines, helmets, and proper lighting, everything that Miguel and his friends had neglected. With methodical precision, the rescue team descended into the pit, their gear and training a sharp contrast to the reckless approach the group had taken. The sound of their footsteps echoed in the cavern, as they carefully navigated the dangerous drop. At the bottom, among the shattered beer bottles and debris, they found Miguel's lifeless body. The fall had been fatal, the impact causing catastrophic head trauma. The medical examiner later confirmed that death had been instantaneous, a small mercy in an otherwise tragic situation. As the rescue workers carefully removed Miguel's body, the weight of the event hit the friends harder than ever. The reality of their negligence and the consequences of their poor decisions were inescapable. What was meant to be a fun weekend trip had ended in a preventable death. The friends could only watch in silence as Miguel's body was carried out of the cave, the tragedy marking the end of their ill-fated adventure. In the aftermath of the tragic incident, the 4 surviving friends were left to face the consequences of their reckless actions. What had started as a carefree trip, filled with excitement and alcohol, now seemed like a distant memory. The weight of their poor decisions hung heavily over them as they watched the rescue workers carry Miguel's body from the cave. Their fun-filled weekend had turned into a nightmare, and they couldn't escape the fact that it could have been prevented. They had failed to respect the cave, the dangers of the environment, and the necessary precautions. In the weeks that followed, signs were posted around Cueva de los Caballos and Salto de Zocon, warning visitors of the risks and prohibiting underground raves. But for those who understood the unforgiving nature of caves, no warning sign could truly convey the lesson learned that day: that nature's wonders are only worth exploring when approached with proper knowledge, respect, and safety. The surviving friends realized, too late, that no amount of alcohol or reckless fun was worth ignoring basic safety rules. The tragedy was a painful reminder that when it comes to exploring nature's most dangerous places, preparedness and sobriety are the only things that can keep you safe. Respect nature's dangers. Proper preparation, safety, and sobriety are essential when exploring unfamiliar environments. Recklessness can lead to irreversible consequences.